Back again on Connecticut Morning, and I am so pleased on this most frigid of days in January. It is so cold out there, I can't tell you, but we're going to warm your heart a little bit because we're going to have a great discussion here with a very, very nice lady whom I've known recently from my hometown of Stamford, Connecticut, Judy Heft. Judy is a financial concierge, and she deals in money management of those of all ages and stages, but she has a particular affinity towards elderly folks and some of the abuses that may go on with the elderly, and it's just because of their trusting nature and the fact that they generally are sharing and open people. They come from a different time. They're ripe for all kinds of issues, and what can we do about that really, and what can we do to prevent that? So Judy, it's such a pleasure to have you today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure to speak with you. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
And
I think, you asked a question. I think the most important thing, the first thing to do is to communicate with your elderly parents and relatives, and because it's not an easy task.
Now, this is an amazing thing, and I know you and I have chatted about it. A good part of our audience, perhaps maybe not our entire audience, knows who Mickey Rooney is. I mean, Mickey Rooney was a very familiar figure as an actor and a singer and as a musical performer for years and years and years and years, and was associated, of course, with Judy Garland. And people like I've got Mark and Jennifer here probably don't. Judy Garland, who's that? Oh, she was Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz. Oh yeah, I know her. Well, Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland did a lot together, and they were kind of contemporaries in that regard. And my first thought is, my word, if this could happen to Mickey Rooney, it could happen to anyone.
That's very true. It could happen to anybody, because I think a lot of times some of the seniors that I deal with are just lonely and they're looking for a friend. They're happy to have someone to talk to and maybe friend people, and next thing you know, they're in their accounts swindling them.
Now, how does this usually happen? I mean, is it because the elderly are trusting? Is it the fact that they're left alone, their kids are out doing other things? I mean, you've seen enough of this. Please tell us so we could be better aware, frankly.
Well, I think that a lot of the things you said are true. I think that an elder abuser could be anyone. I mean, if you see a sign of a new best friend, like I said before, a lot of times the seniors are just lonely and they're just looking for company, or some scam artist calls them on the phone and are just happy to have someone to talk to, especially if they're recently widowed or living alone, or their children live halfway across the country, which is fairly common right now. It's not like it was back in the 50s where we all lived in the same three-family house in the same town and everybody took care of everybody, but now all the moms are out working and, they're not there to keep an eye on their elderly parents, so I think that's part of the problem. And then there's strangers coming in. There's also caregivers. And a lot of the caregivers, sometimes they have a sense of entitlement because they think they're working for someone who might be, quote-unquote, wealthy, and definitely wealthier than they might be. And so they hear numbers flashing around, numbers that they never really could comprehend, and they think, wow, there's all this money around. I'd like to have some of it. I work hard here.
Yeah, or who's going to really miss it, and so I can just kind of take it and kind of go on to the next town, so to speak. Have in your professional career, have you run into situations where there might have been one or two individuals who were perhaps doing this on a serial basis to several elderly within a town, a community, a county, a state?
Well, I can't say that I've seen more than one person attacking, other elderly people. I've seen it happen frequently. I really have. I had a client once who was 101 years old, and he was, product of the Depression, a very wealthy man with no children, living in a high-end assisted living situation, and he had a caregiver there. And I knew his spending patterns. He was quite frugal, even though he had plenty of money, but that's just the way he was raised. Generous to his charitable contributions, but, he didn't buy himself new clothes, etc. And all of a sudden, I noticed all these checks that were going out. I didn't have access. I was just helping him write his checks. He was signing his own checks, so I didn't have any real access at the time. And I noticed all of a sudden, when the bank statement came, that there were all these checks that were written that he signed that were being cashed at the gas station, or just all of a sudden a new TV appeared in the apartment, was just something he never would have bought for himself. A lot of holiday decorations that was around the holidays, and just things that were turning up that were not his style. And I brought it to his attention, and we went to the bank together, and it turned out that the caregiver in 1 month had stolen $16,000 from him. She was just putting checks in front of him to sign, and he had trusted her. She was a companion, and so he signed the checks. And she was just cashing them all over the place and buying things, and buying things for herself as well. Not only the TV in there where she was staying, taking care of him, but all kinds of other things. And he was devastated. He could not even believe that anybody would do this. Anybody that he trusted would do this. So I contacted his attorney, who was power of attorney for him, and reported it to the police. But unfortunately, he was ill at the time, and he was 101, but he passed away 2 weeks later. He was just so devastated. And sometimes I think, well, is that really what pushed him over the edge? So the police couldn't do anything about it because he was already passed on.
Deceased. Now,
I'm not really sure what the trustee of his estate ended up doing, but I don't think they ever collected on that money because it was his signature.
yeah, and I guess that really kind of leads me to my next question. In studying this for our interview, and what I might have seen through the years, kind of working in a field similar to yours, I'm amazed as to what the authorities either don't know or really can't do with respect to this pilfering of the elderly, if you will. And obviously improvements can be made. And is it a case of there's too few people assigned with too many cases? Is it a case of, which I often look at of, it would be great if you guys could do this if you actually knew what it was that you were supposed to be looking at, and, you need to show them. Why is there really, no real or very little real oversight, for lack of a better word, in these matters?
I just don't think they have enough force, enough people on the force to take care of these matters. There's more, I don't want to say important, but more, pending criminal items going on that are just take precedence.
A lot more, yeah, for sure. Now,
I think that's part of the problem. I had another client who actually got hit up twice from his checking account. He had kept a lot of money in his checking account, and the reason I did was brought in because he bought a car for a caregiver turned bookkeeper. She really wasn't a bookkeeper, but he had her writing checks and doing everything, and he ended up loaning her, quote unquote, loaning her money to buy a car. And the next thing right after I came in, his account was hacked. I was only working with him for about a month, and his checking account was hacked. And then it happened so we changed the account, opened a whole new account, new passwords, and it happened about 6 months again. 6 months later, the same thing happened again, and the bank said that, which I don't know if this is really true, or if they were just saying it to take the blame off of them, that they said that sometimes, or oftentimes when an account is hacked, one person, that it can happen again. They're a target, and they've got their information. So I don't know, I'm not really, I don't understand that whole technical world really that well, what goes on behind the scenes of hacking. But apparently, once you've been hacked, that's it, that they can come back and get you again. So we keep an eye. Now we keep a really low balance in this man's checking account so that we don't have to worry about anything like that.
Yeah, that believe me, that's wisdom on your part. Now, what I would like to do, because we have an audience of all over, wherever, not everyone necessarily may know the nature of a document called the power of attorney or a power of attorney. And can you explain what this document is and how some unscrupulous caregiver or friend of an elderly person might use it to manipulate money into an account with their own name on it or for their own benefit?
Well, power of attorney is a written authorization giving someone, well, it's a written form giving someone authorization to represent or act on their behalf on any, on another person's private affairs or business or any other legal matters. So they have access to their investment account, to their checking account. They can actually, on some power of attorneys, they can buy and sell real estate.
Wow.
I wouldn't recommend doing that, giving that kind of a power of attorney to anyone unless they're your lawyer. But they can be very. You can do a lot with a power of attorney, actually.
And and to me, it's like if I'm sitting in a bank, and Mildred DeAngelo, my deceased mother, walks in with a power of attorney from Tony DeAngelo. That doesn't look horribly terrible. Tony DeAngelo being her son. Whereas if Mildred DeAngelo walks in with a power of attorney from, John Smith, I mean, to me, if I'm sitting at the receipt of custom, as it were, I'd kind of like be, hey, something doesn't necessarily look right here. But apparently, for somebody to manipulate with the power of attorney, it doesn't seem that there's a lot of that, if you want to call it critical thinking, going on out there.
No, you're right. It's pretty easy to get a power of attorney. First, when I had another elderly client, I have her now, who lost her husband. He was 107, she's 93, and
Dear Lord.
Her landlord was, I know, God love them, I think they were married 68 years, it was wonderful, a cute couple. And their landlord was starting to take advantage of her. He would do everything, even though he was blind at the end, he would just tell her what to do. And then I was brought in to pay the bills because she just really couldn't handle it at the end when he was passing away. But anyway, I wanted to become her power of attorney because I was concerned about this landlord taking advantage of her. She had no children. She had some nieces that lived far away that actually I didn't even know she had until after her husband had passed away, and I met them at his funeral. But, I didn't want to put myself in that position because I didn't want her to think that I was trying to take advantage of her. And then when we were having this problem with this landlord who was taking advantage of her, and, I took her to an attorney to help figure this matter out, and the attorney said to me, Judy, you really should become her power of attorney. I said, well, why don't you suggest that? I said, because I think it would be better coming from an attorney. Yes, I think it's the right thing to do.
Right.
I will definitely look out for her.
You don't want to give that
I
appearance,
that
I understand.
And I'm not. And, no one's going to question me. But I think the suggestion coming from an attorney definitely makes more sense. So, I am her power of attorney, and I keep an eye on her, and just make sure all her bills are paid and negotiate with her landlord. And, it was just a huge piece of her ceiling was falling off in this apartment, and, he just didn't want to fix it for her, and we finally got that done.
Well, that's, and if not for you, what really happens, and that's really the, the happier part of such a discussion. I'm going to give you a situation here, and this is something I think that's not at all uncommon to me, and you have, I'll put my mother in, Mildred DeAngelo, living at Woolward Manor in Stamford, Connecticut, which was her last residence. You had Tony DeAngelo at the time in, New Haven, Connecticut. My two brothers were, well out of state, and my mother pretty much was, there wasn't a lot there, and there was a, whatever was there, she could pretty much handle on her own. But you have these situations where there's 2 or 3 siblings that are scattered all over the globe. You have mom, and the question is, and mom has some means. And what's the plan of attack here? I mean, do the 3 siblings, or 2 siblings, or 4 siblings have to get together and say, hey, look, this is what we need to do? And the fact that not any one of them can, in effect, be in Stamford, Connecticut 24/7, what's the approach here? How do we stop something from happening? Or if something is happening, how do we put a stop to it?
Well, I think the first thing to do is to get an elder care manager in there, really, to keep an eye on mom and manage if she does need a caregiver, or someone to go there with her to go, I'm not even talking about the financial end of it. And then they bring, elder care managers usually end up bringing me in, because we have one client, for instance, who the children, one child lives in England, the other one that's living here is not 100%. And so it's just a constant battle. So she has an elder care manager that takes care of her parents and makes sure that the caregivers are doing their job and, doing the right thing. Goes to the doctor, listens to hear what the doctor has to say, make sure the medication is being managed properly. Hires someone not hires, but subcontracts out to somebody like me to make sure the bills are getting paid in a timely manner. Works closely with the therapist if need be. So an elder care manager is a really important person to have, I think.
Now, what exactly?
Will notice if there's, if the caregivers are getting too friendly.
What exactly is an elder care manager? How would you describe that function?
An elder care manager is a person that really coordinates puts all the pieces of the puzzle together so that they fit and work well. Gets all the gears oiled, I guess would be a good way to say it. She'll hire the caregivers for you. She'll work with the agencies to make sure you have the right caregiver. Sometimes she has to go in there and tell these people that they shouldn't be driving, and so she'll take them to a place to have a driving test because, we all know that you don't want to give up your driver's license.
Oh, for sure.
That's, one of the first things, losing your independence. That's a horrible thing to have to say to someone. And also, she can act as a mediator because, if the children, like you said, one, like, for instance, you're in New Haven, other children are scattered, maybe you don't all get along, more cases than not, and the more money there is, it seems that also is the case. The children, have different ideas of how mom or dad should be handled. So she can come in with an unbiased approach and more of an open mind and help you come together to an agreement. So, and then just, like I said, go to the doctor's appointments, coordinate the coordinate everything that really needs to be done.
Well, and you raise an interesting point, which is quote unquote, I guess you hear about it or you read about it or it's referred to in literary or financial journals known as quote unquote, have you had, in quotation marks, the talk with mom or dad? And I could remember one friend in Stamford, and you can relate to this, and it was the thing where his mom was quote unquote the kid in town. The other girl, I think, was in Massachusetts, and it was this whole thing of, mom, Pete shouldn't be driving. No, he's all right. Pete shouldn't be driving. He's all right. Well, the eureka moment one day was he's coming down Hubbard Avenue, and he's actually like up at the hospital. And as you know, Hubbard Avenue kind of goes like maybe 3 or 4 landings. It's one descension up, it's one descension down. And he's almost run off the road by his grandfather in a Buick Wildcat, who, after almost running him off the road, proceeds to drive up on the other side of the road, driving up on the sidewalk. And he drove home and had this Ralph Cramden-esque moment, said, "That's it, it's over." And the question is, how does one have the talk with mom or dad? Hey, you're kind of losing your grip here. I mean, the objective of that is, and you can't come out and say that, but that's an awful difficult conversation. And how does somebody have that talk?
That is a very difficult conversation to have. I think the first thing to do is to pick a nice time and a place without distractions and keep everything in the I message. Talk about how you're feeling. Don't put blame on them. Or consider having a mutually trusted person or a mediator present. Sometimes someone that's not as emotionally involved. Keep it slow. Talk about one issue at a time. Try not to get emotional, which is not easy. Don't bring up the past, and keep it free from distractions. Have eye-to-eye contact, and most importantly, I guess, would be listen. Just listen to what they have to say. Because I remember when my own mother, who was, I guess, 89 or so, we told her that, she was living in Florida at the time, we told her that we didn't think she should be driving anymore. But she still had the car there, and she was living in assisted living. And I remember visiting her one time, and the car was there, and she was like, "Oh, look, my car's there, I miss my car, I really wish I could be driving." And I said, Mom, it's really not you, it's the other person that you have to watch out for. But is her, but, really was her. But, your reactions, you might be smart and have all your marbles, but your reaction time isn't that quick. If you had to step on a brake really quickly, there could be a problem. And, just try to rationalize with them. The driver's license piece is a really hard piece. And the banking today is so different, as we all know. I mean, with everything being electronic, and, it's just really overwhelming. We don't get our checks back like we used to.
Oh, for sure.
Everything's electronic debits, and, it's just, everything is so new. It's a whole new world. And it's hard enough for us baby boomers that didn't grow up with computers in our hands. I mean, you see these kids now, they're 2 years old, and they know how to use an iPad.
Oh, I know.
They're
It's
walking around with their parents' iPhones. It's just amazing. They're born with it. So it's hard. Imagine it's hard enough for us, it is for people in their late 80s and 90s to navigate this technological world we live in.
And you raise an interesting point, because I've had this with people, and I still do. You have an elderly parent, client, or whatever, a person needing assistance who's over at point A, and they're not at all computer literate. You've got, say someone there who hopefully can be your hands and feet, say an elder care manager or yourself, and you've got siblings in, locations A, B, and C respectively. What do you do to keep everybody in the loop? Do you send out like a monthly financial report? Do you send verified balances? I mean, it's the kind of thing that it's always a great thing to trust good people. Everybody's always mistrustful for obvious reasons. How do you keep everybody in the loop and let them know, hey, everything here is okay, and this is what's happening, and this is where the world is at?
Well, exactly what you said. We send out monthly reports or quarterly reports if they want them, and also everything is very transparent. If we're paying all the bills online, the children also have online access to that bank account, and they can go on there anytime they want and take a look at it and see what's going on. So it's all very transparent. And reports are being sent, usually monthly, so they can see exactly what we're spending what on.
Well, you are in a great profession, Judy, and there should be more of you. Maybe not for for your benefit necessarily, but for society's.
Competition's good.
But I mean, it's iron sharpens iron. I've always believed that. In our waning moments, I just would like to get your thoughts on. James Brown used to sing, "If I ruled the world, this is what the world would be." If you ruled this world. And I'm not talking about people's actions and reactions and how they do things. We're never going to change any of that. I mean, we might be able to change one thing here and one thing there, but what types of things do you think you'd like to see on a global scale to make this quote-unquote of elder care perhaps be a lot more better and efficient and safer than it might be right now?
Well, I think, the most important thing maybe would be keeping the lines of communication open and just, having patience. I think patience is really important because I think sometimes, well, not sometimes, a lot of times when I see my clients, if I see them on a weekly basis, they could tell me the same story every week. And, I don't go there with that emotional baggage that I would if it was my mother. If it was my mother, maybe I would say, Mom, I already heard that story. But when you're going in there unemotionally attached and you're only going to be there for an hour a week at most, you can listen to those stories. And I think just being a good listener and looking for signs and being patient. The world is a little more patient, maybe.
Oh, yeah, for certain. Believe it or not, we're winding up in our time slot. Where can our friends and fans reach you and find out more about what you do and actually educate themselves on how to deal with an elderly parent? Because it's something we're all going to run into.
They can call me at 203-978-1858, or they can take a look at my website, which is Judith Heft, JUDITHHEFT.com. And I can always be reached there through my website or through the telephone.
And you're also on Facebook and LinkedIn, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn, and my office is at 1177 Summer Street right downtown Stamford. So if anybody wants to talk to me, and of course they need an appointment, but I'm more than happy to meet with anybody. If anybody has any questions, they can email me or call me.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
Judy,
right here, or connect with me on my Facebook business page is Judith Heft Associates, and my LinkedIn page is Judy Heft.
And I love your newsletter. Keep sending it. And thank you for being our first guest of 2014. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and thanks for the valuable information you have provided.
Well, thank you, Tony. I've enjoyed it, too.
Thank you. That's
Appreciate it.
Judy Heft, the Financial Concierge in Stamford, Connecticut. And we will be coming back to you with, we like to do really wild clips on this show, and we've got some clips that I think will actually blow your doors. And you got to put your history cap on, but we do a lot of history here, we do a lot of sports and whatever else. And on a frigid January 11th, 2014, it's Connecticut Morning in the afternoon, right back after this.